welcome to this demo about Qodly Studio. For this demo, we will use an existing 4D application. It is an healthcare system, and it's an application to handle appointments between patients and doctors. So as it is an existing 4D application, we already have this 4D form to handle patients. So this is the patient's list. We can view a patient with their last and next appointment. We can also select a patient and update it like this. And thanks to the search tool, we can search for a patient. And finally, we can add a new patient. So we can create a new patient like this. So let's have a look now at the data model. So for this, I open the structure. So we have an appointment data class with a when attribute. It is a date, and a what time attribute. It is a time. And we have this people data class. Both patients and doctors are in this data class. We have the first related attribute, patient. It is a people entity. And a second related attribute, doctor. It is also a people entity. And now let's have a look at the Data Explorer. So to see the data, these are all the appointments we have in the application. And not this full name attribute. It is because we have a computed attribute. In the people entity class, we have this full name computed attribute. It returns the first name and the last name. So it's now time for us to offer new features on the web for this application. So that's why I use now Qodly Studio to create new web features for our end users. So I open now Qodly Studio thanks to the Qodly Studio menu. And this is the Qodly Studio interface. And to start, I create the first Qodly web page for the application. If you don't know how to start or how to build your first web pages, there is the templates library. Templates are already built-in pages, and you can use them very easily and custom them to fit your needs. So here in the templates library, we have this healthcare section containing templates featuring health topics. So I select the first template and I drag and drop it on the canvas. And note that I can remove some component to fit my needs or customize them. So here is now the use case I'm going to play. It is displaying all the appointments in a list and a button to cancel a selected appointment. And this button will be disabled if the appointment date is in the past. And at the end, we will have an overview on custom components you can import in your Qodly application. So for this, we will use a chart to display the number of appointments for the next 3 months. But let's start now with the demo. So I remove this text component and I update the title to appointments list. And I remove now this other text component. And I need a component list to display the appointments. So for that, I use again the templates library. There is the data tables section with already styled data tables. So I choose a template and I drag and drop it on the canvas. The data table is a Qodly Studio component to display a simple list like that. And to display the appointments, I need a source. So that's why I go into the catalog in the data classes section. I select the appointment data class and I create the app source. It's an entity selection containing all the entities. And the source is there. And to display it in my data table, I drag and drop it on the component. And I can verify here the binding is properly done. So let's start now customizing the columns. So for the first column, I display the when attribute with a when header. For the second column, I display the what time attribute with a time title. And for the first column, I display the patient full name. So I use the related attribute patient, and I select the full name computed attribute with a patient header. And I add a last column to display the doctor full name. So I use the doctor related attribute. So not also the type ahead for the attributes. I select the full name attributes and I put a doctor title. And now I'm going to update the width of the two last columns. And for the when column, as it is a date, I can select a date format, and for the what time attribute, it's a time, so I can select a time format. I save my work and let's test the page. So it's well done. We can see all the appointments are displayed in a smart list, and this in only a few seconds. But they are not sorted by date. So let's see how easy it is to fix that. So back to Qodly, I select the page component and open the events panel. And I select the onInit event. So it is when the page is firstly initialized. And I set up a standard action on a Qodly source. And the source is the app's entity selection. I want to order it, so I select the order action. And I put the attribute, so I order on when and on what time attributes in the ascending order. So let's test that again. So I refresh the page and the order is perfect now. So we can go to the next step. I need now to select an appointment and to display a cancel button to drop it. So we already have this button thanks to the template. So I'm going to back to Qodly now to update the label of this button. And on the data table, there is this selected element property. It is the appointment selected by the user. And I need a source to handle it. So that's why from the apps source, I create now the selected app source. It is an entity. And the initial value is the first appointment of the app's entity selection. And I drag and drop it on the data table. I check the binding is properly done. And I select now the button and open the events panel. So on the on-click event, I set up a standard action on the selected app source, and I choose the drop action. After the deletion, the app's entity selection will contain blank spaces for dropped entities. So to avoid those blank lines on my interface, I set up a second standard action on the app's entity selection. And now I select the clean action to have this selection clean from drop entities. So let's save that and run again the page. So I refresh the page. Now I select, for example, the second appointment. I click on the button. So it is dropped, and I can select again the second one and cancel this appointment. So the deletion works properly. And we can enhance all this because the cancel button should be disabled if a user selects a past appointment, because of course it makes no sense to cancel a past appointment. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to do that in Qodly Studio thanks to the states. So the states allow the UI to be dynamic according to the user's action. So in this states section, I create a state. I create the disable cancellation state. So we have the base page here and the state. The state is a variation of the base page. On this state, for the button, I apply another background color. I choose a red background color. And I disable this button thanks to the disabled property. And I want this state to be enabled if the selected appointment is in the past. So for this, let's go back to 4D. In the appointment entity class, we have a very simple computed attribute. Is past is a Boolean, and it returns true if the appointment is in the past. So a state can be bound to a condition. So in the condition editor for this state, I open the condition editor and I add a condition. The condition involves a Qodly source, and the source is selected app is past attribute, and I select the is true operator. So when selected app is past is true, then the disable cancellation state is enabled. Else it's not enabled, and the user will be able to click on the cancel button. So let's test that again. I refresh the page, and now I select a past appointment. So the button is red and disabled. I can't click on it. And let's try with another past appointment. It's the same. If I select a future appointment, I can click on the button and cancel it because the button is enabled and the appointment is dropped, and so on. I can select a second one and cancel and drop the appointment. So as you can see, the state is a very powerful feature to handle a dynamic UI. Of course, this example is very simple, but be sure you can handle very complex business logic thanks to the states and thanks to the condition editor. At the beginning of the demo, I talked about displaying a chart. So it's now time to talk about custom components, because Qodly Studio offers various components out of the box, but developers can craft specific ones using React and propose them to the Qodly community. So this extends the capabilities of Qodly Studio and allow to fit specific needs. So on this GitHub repository, you will find all the available custom components. You can also develop your own custom components. And now I have selected the Apex chart. And each custom component has its documentation. And some information is provided, especially for the required data source. So we see the required source and the structure it must have. So now I can download this Apex chart component thanks to the latest link. I download it. And I can upload now it in my application thanks to the upload component icon. So I click on this icon. And for this, I just have to follow the instructions. So I select the component. I install it. So installing a custom component is very easy. And now the uploaded component is there in the custom component section with all its available charts. So to start, I remove now useless components on the canvas. And I drag and drop the area chart in the style box. And a custom component has specific properties like the title. So we can here update the title. It is updated. And if we have a look in the properties panel, we can see that this component requires a source. So that's why I create now the source here. I create the statistics source. And it is an object. It is an object because it is required by the documentation. And I bind this source on the chart by drag and drop. And on this chart, I want to display the number of appointments for the next 3 months. So for this, I have already prepared a function. So let's go back to 4D. In the appointment class, we have this app statistics function. So no need to go into details in the implementation, but this function returns an object with the number of appointments for the next 3 months. So as this function returns statistics, I want to get them each time the app's entity selection changes. So that's why I edit now the app's source. And I select the onChange event. And on this event, I set up a function call to call my app's statistics function. And the result must go in the statistics object, which is bound with the chart. And I have a last setting to do with the chart for the y-axis. The y-axis tick must be 4. And the minimum value must be 0. So let's have now a complete and final run for this page. So all seems good. When the page is initialized, the app's entity selection is built. So the unchanged event is triggered and the app statistics function is called. That's why the chart already contains up-to-date data. In my appointments list, I have 10 appointments in November, 3 in December, and 5 in January. So the chart is up to date. If I select a past appointment, I can't cancel it. And if I select a future appointment in November, so for example, this one, I can cancel it. And the chart is up to date with 9 because the app's entity selection has changed. So the statistics have been refreshed. I can do that again. If I select another appointment, I cancel it. The chart is up to date to 8. And let's have a last just for the fun. And I drop it and the chart is up to date with 7. So this is the end of this demo. I hope you enjoyed it. as you can see, you can extend your 4D application on the web very easily with Qodly Studio, because Qodly Studio offers various powerful and very easy to use features for that. So thank you for attending.